I was very interested in this movie already before I went to see it. Why? Because it has very polarizing reviews in IMDb, and I was very curious what's up with this movie. After seeing this movie, I understood the both sides of this argument. So, don't worry, darling, and let me explain. Just please be warned that this contains spoilers ahead. Our main hero in Don't Worry Darling is Alice. She's a young, kind of a naive woman living with her husband in American dream town in 50's. Alice stays at home all day, takes care of the house and cooks for her husband while he's at work. She also attends dance classes with her neighbors. But Alice is a curious one, and she starts to suspect that there's something wrong with this world. Alice kind of reminded me of classic sci-fi character who doesn't know a thing about the world where she lives in. Then bit by bit this character starts to unravel what the world is about, something shocking comes out. The story is told from Alice's perspective and the viewer gathers information about the world only from her point of view. This approach is one of my favorite in sci-fi genre, so I really liked Alice's character. Jack, who is Alice's husband, seems a good guy at the start, but in the end he turns out to be a villain. I think that he was pretty convincing when he was the good guy, but his actual nature didn't seem to leave strong enough impression for me. It's just he doesn't seem to be the type who would do all the crazy things he did. It just felt kind of unorganic for him to turn out the way he was. I think that they could have done a better job with this character by making him more villainous to be a better fit for his true nature. Frank is the main villain in this movie, and he's a much better fit to be a villain. Already from the start he gives this aura about him that he's not the good guy here, and it feels organic and fitting for him. I also very much enjoyed his dialogues with Alice and the way he was toying with her. I think that he's a good as a character. All the other characters weren't that important here, because this movie really is about Alice's experience in this world and about the world itself. The movie didn't focus on the backstories and character traits. 50's America dream desert suburb with cocktail dresses and beautiful colorful 50's cars. The movie is very bright and colorful with something dark lurking behind it all. I think that this is a very cool and unusual setting and very much enjoyed it. Maybe it's just me, but already from the start I felt that there has to be something about nuclear war in this movie. It isn't the case at all. But I wonder, is it intentional to make it feel that a nuclear war is going on, or that Earth has already experienced it and everything is dead except for this dreamy suburb? This goes hand in hand with the 50's theme where nuclear weapons are a hot topic. I think that this is intentional to make viewer believe in this, but the actual secret is completely different. However, I don't think that the movie gains much from this deception. It actually loses because some of the things happening in the movie doesn't make sense for the actual plot, but makes sense for the nuclear plot. Still, I think that from the visual perspective this movie is stunning and a joy to watch. The idea for the story isn't a new one, but done in a different, fresh way than other media has explored it before. This had a great potential, but unfortunately it has an enormous amount of plot holes which I just can't forgive. This is the reason for the polarizing reviews in IMDb. From one side, great sci-fi idea, explored from a good character's perspective in a beautiful, interesting setting. From another side, the story is littered with plot holes and just feels kind of lazy because it could have worked with some changes, without changing the main setting and vibe. So let me explain the main idea. The idea is that the whole world in this movie is just some computer program like Matrix. Alice is trapped in here by her husband without her knowing it. The world is her husband's dream where men have their wives at home cooking and caring for the house while they are at work. Then they have these 50's cars to drive around and endless parties almost every night. It's like stereotypical man's dream, but that's not a complaint. I'm sure many real people would want to live in a world like that. The problem here is that Alice is not willingly kept there. She's actually at home in some let-down apartment in a timeline which could be not far from nowadays. She's laying in a bed with intravenous therapy in her hand to keep her alive. Alice's eyes how the virtual world passes on, so she keeps living in there without suspecting a thing. This is fine and all, but now the plot holes come. Oh boy, oh boy. The first thing which kind of doesn't make sense is with Jack. In the real world, Alice was a doctor and he seemed to be without a job. He also was kind of loving husband who wanted to spend more time with his wife, while Alice couldn't do it because she had endless shifts one after another. Then somewhere happened a shift and suddenly he has a job to pay for the virtual reality program and Alice is trapped in the matrix. He did this just to spend more time with his wife. The main motivation kind of doesn't go together with the super evil plan he executed. That's why I said before that Jack is not a convincing villain. It would work better if he were a maniac from the start, creeping on unsuspecting women. But okay, this is still not that bad of a plot hole. Already worst problem of this movie is the weird system people enter and exit this 50's matrix. Women who live in the suburb are not allowed to go out in the desert. There is the building through which one can exit, but this building is not guarded in any way. They are just told not to go there and that it's dangerous. When Alice reaches the exit from the virtual world the first time, she does exactly the same thing she does at the end of the movie. But for some reason she doesn't exit the matrix the first time. This is not explained in any way, she just wakes up in her bed in the matrix. It would have been easier the first time because then nobody knew where Alice were and nobody was trying to stop her, but for some reason she didn't exit. But now let's discuss the reason why Alice went in a desert in the first place. That is the biggest plot hole in Don't Worry Darling. A mysterious plane appears in the sky and crashes, prompting Alice to go in the desert and help the pilot of the crashed plane. This is just a plot device to start the chain events of Alice discovering the truth of this world. But unfortunately this event doesn't make any sense. Why would there be a mysterious plane in a perfect virtual world? It would make sense in the context of Big War I already mentioned earlier, but this is not the case. It would have been much more believable if Alice were just curious about what's going on in the desert. But I guess the script writer wanted concrete event to prompt Alice to go in the desert. But this isn't the end of plot holes. After Alice starts to remember her actual life and suspects that there's something wrong with this 50's world, she gets brainwashed. Surely she wouldn't remember anything though, right? Wrong. After this procedure, Alice suddenly remembers everything and escapes the matrix through the building in the desert. This also doesn't make any sense. There are also smaller things in this movie not making sense, for example weird promotions, Frank's wife killing him in the end, and almost every woman kept there against their will. Surely it would have been easier to find willing women for this project. All in all, story feels like it's almost a prophecy that Alice is the one who escapes, because she herself does very little for this to happen. Everything just happens conveniently for her. I feel conflicted about this movie, because despite all its problems it felt pretty good. And I see that with a few changes in movie's logic it could have been a truly great movie, but that's not the case. From the other hand, for example, Nope movie also had issues with logic, and I gave it 9 out of 10. However, this movie has a lot more things wrong with it, so I will give it 7 out of 10. Thank you for watching.